All right, welcome to our visual scripting crash course. My name's Kevin. I am currently a tech artist at Riot Games, and I have been teaching various forms of scripting classes over the years, over like the last 20 plus years. And I realized that there is a large portion of visual scripting that for people who have never had any kind of scripting classes or a programming background are potentially foreign. The idea of for loops and nodes and execution orders and variables and all these things that honestly I think a lot of people take for granted who have these backgrounds would be potentially beneficial for anybody who is, for example, a little bit more creative. They just never had it. This is the first time using Unreal. It's the first time using a visual scripting language. So that's what this class is about. This class is hyper focused on visual scripting, specifically in Unreal Engine, in order to teach you the foundations that perhaps you're missing as a result of not having some of those backgrounds, so that you can use that to leap off of and you'll just be more at ease with blueprints as a result of understanding everything that you're looking at. Now it seems like, I think part of it is because it's visual scripting, it seems like it's going to be easy, or it is easy, and I think it is easier. But when I sat down to make this first class, it was daunting, trying to figure out how to even focus on the fundamentals of visual scripting with all the information that is being thrown at you in Unreal because the program is so deep. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure it out, and I'm kind of done with it. We're just gonna roll. We're just gonna throw caution to the wind and hop in. So this class is very much a work in progress. As we proceed, don't hesitate to throw in comments. Don't hesitate to throw back ideas. If I have to go back and re-record a class, I'm happy to do that, and we can do that. With all of that context, we're going to be hopping into Unreal. We're going to be focusing on visual scripting to help break down those learning curves for you and help you level up. So let's hop into Unreal, get started, and keep in mind, work in progress. Don't hesitate to throw in the feedback. Let's go. And first thing we need is a project. Now, you could use a blank project. If you choose a blank project, I found that the blank project is not so blank. It comes with this giant world and everything with it. And so I'm actually going to choose, I've messed with this for a little bit. I've also tried the simulation blank. I'm just going to go with what I know. I'm going to choose the third person project. And I'm going to give my project name visual scripting intro. And we'll just create that in our normal Unreal projects folder. Now Unreal is going to go out and make this project for us. It's going to restart. And then once we get logged in, what we are going to do is we are going to set up a blueprint. I know you're thinking, but you said we weren't going to be learning about blueprints. Well, we do need to set up our classroom. And for our classroom, I think it's probably best for us to work in a blueprint because that's where a lot of the meat of visual scripting is done. So let me make this full screen. And you can see we have our third person template. And I'm just going to, in this content folder, all right, first, hold on. You've never logged into Unreal before. You just created a project. You're like, holy goodness, what am I looking at? Let's do a quick tour. Top of our screen, this is kind of our viewport. There are, hopefully you're at least a little bit into games or 3D of some kind. If you want to move around in this viewport, you can hold the Alt key and left click and drag, and that will rotate it. Point is, let's not get lost there. We're not even gonna really have to do that once we get in the classroom. Point is, this is a viewport. Over on the right, this is our outliner. And at the bottom, generally speaking, is our content browser. If you do not see your content browser, if you go up to Window, Content Browser, you'll be able to choose Content Browser. Okay, with the Content Browser, this is where we store everything that we're working on. It's kind of like our filing cabinets. If we have a desk and the top of the desk is our workspace, it's sort of like the drawers and the filing cabinets that we're working with underneath. So I'm going to create a folder in here by right-clicking in gray space, and you'll notice at the top, fourth one from the top is new folder. and I'm just going to call this visual scripting. Double click on the folder, and we should be kind of where we're going to store all of our files initially. All right, in order to get going we're still not quite in our classroom, but we're getting there. Now, this is the part that's a little bit of a leap of faith. So roll with me if you've never worked with Unreal before. I think the easiest way for us to focus on visual scripting is to work within a blueprint. The quick summary version is a blueprint can do a lot of different things, but basically it's an object that usually does something in the world in Unreal. We are going to we're going to right click here in gray again, and we are going to create, you'll notice the third section down here is called Create Basic Asset. We're going to choose Blueprint Class. Okay, it's going to pop up a window, and we're going to pick the first one because I think this is going to be the easiest one for us to work with. So we're just going to choose Actor, and we're going to call this Class 1 Actor. And I'm actually going to prefix this. We're going to call this Blueprint BP underbar Class 1 Actor. Okay, almost there. Let's double click on this. And this is going to open the blueprint editor. Let's take a quick break. Or not a break, but let's just take a quick pause and go on a little bit of a tour and take a deep breath. So far, so good. I'm going to save this just so that I have it saved. Now, again, for those of you that are completely new to Unreal, this is sort of the quick intro. We're kind of glossing over this because we're still not quite to the classroom yet, but we're almost there. So welcome to the blueprint editor. Over on the left hand at the top, we have all of our menus and things like that. We'll explain what this stuff does in a minute. On the left hand side, you have our components. This component section, you can sort of think of this as the visual elements of a blueprint. What do I mean by that? A blueprint can have visual elements. For example, if you're playing a game and the game has an actor or let's say your character, the visual aspects of your character, the outfit, the costume, you might see those over here. If you're doing a virtual production set, you might see over here on the left maybe a camera or something like that. There's lots of different visual things that can go into your components. Below components, you'll notice this section called graphs. These are actually going to be where we're going to be doing a lot of, this is where our classroom is mostly going to be, in the graphs. We'll explain those a little bit. We have graphs, we have functions, variables. All of these are part of the coursework that is coming up. And then over in the middle, we have our viewport. And this is just the 3D view. It works like most other 3D programs in the sense that if you Alt and left click, you can kind of orbit around. If you middle click, you can drag. And if you right click, this is all while holding Alt, and you can basically zoom in and out. Those are the quick 3 things. We're probably not even gonna have to be super savvy with the 3D for the way I'm planning on teaching this course. So just know it's there. This is the viewport. It shows you all the visual elements usually that are shown in your components section in the top left. Finally, for anything that you have selected, over on the right is all the details. And these are all the checkbox and features and things like that. Sometimes, like for example, you might have colors over here, you might have all kinds of different things. And we are going to be using the details panel as well. So that's a quick intro to the initial screen when you log in. And there are 2 other tabs you'll notice up here next to viewport. One is the construction script. We're going to ignore that for now, but we're getting closer. It's called a script. And the other one is the event graph. This is going to be where our classroom is. We are going to spend most of our time in here teaching you how visual scripting works within Unreal. So, welcome to class. We made it. At this point, whenever we start class, whenever we're working, I'm going to try my best to keep it all within this event graph of the actor that we created So if you ever need to get back here, if you were to close this, all you would do is in your content browser, when you first open Unreal, you can double click on visual scripting. You can double click on your blueprint for your class 1 actor. And when you do that, okay, instant freak out. Where's all the stuff that you just showed me? You'll notice that for some reason, this is saying it's a data only blueprint. We can open the full blueprint editor. When we do that, we get back to all the stuff that we were used to seeing before. All right, now we're clicking on the event graph. Let's clean up the classroom so it's not confusing when we start. I'm going to window drag. Okay, so first let's start with what the event graph is. The event graph this is where the meat of the visual scripting, some visual scripting happens, okay? And what it is if we take a step back and take a look at what visual scripting is, and a lot of this in Unreal Engine particularly it is actually sort of a visual way to do programming. Whether you know it or not, at the end of the day, when you're using visual scripting, what has happened is the developers of Unreal Engine or any utility that uses visual scripting, they have made a whole series of very programmer slash logical workflows available to you that you can use in a visual way and are usually a lot more artist friendly. But this is where some of the assumptions have come in. Even though it's visual, if you've never written a chunk of code in your life, or you've never taken a software engineering class, or you haven't been working in Unreal for quite some time, I think there's potentially a lot of things in here that might be new or foreign. So in most visual scripting languages, the boxes that you're going to work with are usually called nodes. And there are different kinds of nodes and they all do different things. So when we first open this event graph, we actually have 3 nodes in here. And fortunately, with visual scripting and scripting in general, usually they're named something so that you can look at them and have an idea of what they do. In this case, we have event tick. We're not going to worry about event tick. If you're new to gaming and you're new to real-time rendering, all those kinds of things, just know that this is an event that ticks. What it really is about is about when the experience or the game is running, the clock is ticking. This event is kind of in reference to that aspect of it. We're going to delete it. I don't want you to stress about it. We can always get it back later if we need it, but we're not going to need it. Our next event is an event actor begin overlap. That might be a little bit foreign to you, but if you just read what it says, actor begin overlap, it probably has something to do with an actor overlapping. I don't really know what exactly that means, but at least it's something. I can kind of guess at what it is. And then the last one that we have is event begin play. Now, hopefully, because it's called begin play, you know that this is an event that happens when begin play starts. Hold on a second. When does begin play start? How do we play? All right. Well, in the top, you'll see this green button. Now, if you click the green button here, it's a play button, which is, very helpful. If you press it here, this is actually going to pop open a new window. I actually like to go back to my map and press play here. If I press play, let's just see what happens. You'll notice that if I press play, we actually begin or start our level. We begin playing. And whether it's a level or a experience or a virtual production set or whatever, we're basically saying start, begin play. Now, this works just like most WASD third-person games. So if you are a gamer at all and you want to run around a little bit just because it's fun, you can use WASD and kind of move your character around. When you're done playing in Unreal 5, starting in 5, I think it was, in order to stop, I believe the default is Shift Escape. You may be able to just press Escape, but if Escape doesn't work, it's Shift Escape. The other thing you can do is press the red square that's at the top here. You can just press stop. All right. So if we go back, let's talk about nodes. Now, generally speaking, when I teach Introduction to Scripting, and if you're following along with the Intro to Scripting for Creatives course, these nodes that we're creating are a lot like commands or functions or commands or events that we can do within Unreal Engine. So this first node that we're working with is called BeginPlay. So what happens is when the experience or the game starts, if this actor exists in the scene, Unreal Engine knows to call BeginPlay. When it calls BeginPlay, anything we do inside of BeginPlay will then happen. Now, how do we kind of show what that might look like? All right, what we are going to do is we are going to create a series of events that happen when BeginPlay starts, just to show you how this workflow might go. And to do that, the developers of Unreal have made available to us a whole bunch of fun, cool things that we can use to do that. So let's create one. Now, in order to create one, we basically need to create a flow, a series of events or a series of steps that are going to happen on BeginPlay. To do that, we use this white pin here, this triangle at the bottom. It's called an execution pin. So what's going to happen is it's going to come in here and BeginPlay, and I'm just left clicking and dragging off of that. And when I do that, it will show me a huge list of executable actions that it could potentially do. Now, we're not going to get too lost in this. You will become more familiar with these as they go, but we're going to start off simple. And we're going to start off with a good old-fashioned print. So I want you to type in here print, and you'll notice that under development, a print string shows up. Now, if you left click on print string, it creates a new node that is a function or a command. Sometimes it's called an event that literally prints a string. That's what it does. So what happens is in visual scripting, when this event is called BeginPlay starts, Unreal looks at this execution pen, goes to the next node and says, what do I want to do? Oh, I'm going to print string. What am I going to print? Well, fortunately, because it's visual, we can see what it's doing pretty clearly, which is super helpful for people who are new. And this is why visual scripting is so accessible to people who are new to programming and scripting in general. But it's going to print a string. We can tell that by reading it, and it's going to print the string hello. Now, if we go back, before we go back, actually, every single time you make a change in this event graph, you need to tell Unreal Engine to, it's called compiling. It basically means take what I've done here, crunch on it a little bit, all down to words and nodes and execution that the engine understands. So if we compile this, you should get a green check mark. If you ever don't get a green check mark, you probably have a problem and you have to fix it. But we compiled it, gets a green check mark, and then I like to save it as well. Just in case Unreal crashes or whatever, we can keep all of our work. All right, now we have BeginPlay and print string hello. If we go back to our third person map and we press play, it doesn't print anything. That is because our new Blueprint Class 1 actor does not even exist in our experience yet. So there's one more piece that we need to do before class is fully ready. Even though we're well into class at this point. What we need to do is we need to drag a copy of our actor into the scene. Now you'll notice when we do this, you can just drag it right in here. It drops it in the world. You can move it around using these handles, up, down, left, and right. You'll notice over in the top right in the outliner, it creates a class 1 actor. Okay, and at this point, when the experience starts, it is going to load up everything that it finds within the world. One of the things that it finds within the world is our actor. When it finds our actor, Unreal Engine says, ooh, I found our actor. And then it goes and looks at it and it says, I have a BeginPlay. I'm going to do a thing. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to print string. So if we come back to our third person map, when we press play now, you'll notice in the top left, there's a little blue text that showed up. It said hello. It disappeared really fast. So let's stop. and let's go back to our print string and let's make some changes to it. Let's make it a lot longer so we can see it better. In this node, you can see this little drop down arrow down here. These are all of the things that we can do with print string that might be useful to us. In this particular case, you'll notice one of the things is a duration. So let's make the duration of 10. All we do is compile, we save this, we go back to our third person map, we press play again, you'll notice it prints hello, and this time hello stays there long enough that we have a chance to read it. When I'm ready to move, and it disappears after 10 seconds. All right, when I'm done, I can stop playing and come back to our blueprint. So we have successfully at this point executed an event, and we've executed a node. Sometimes these are called events, sometimes they'll be functions. There's lots of different names depending on what you dropped out here, but for right now, I think of this as a print string command. All right, let's make another one. What do you mean another one? I mean, we can do a whole series of things. All right, so let's do that. So if I print string again, I can do that by just dragging off the pin to the right, and I can print string again. And what we're going to do in our second node is we're going to print the string world. So this is a very classic scripting introduction thing that you do in almost every scripting language, and visual scripting is a scripting language. So let's just do the good old classic hello world. Now, just like we did with our first print string, we are going to change our duration. We're going to change it to 10, and we are also going to change our text color. Let's make it something like hot pink. So if I compile this and save this, what's going to happen? Unreal is going to come in here. Unreal is going to start the level. It's going to look in the level. It's going to find our actor. Then inside of our actor, part of what the actor does is it does the begin play, and then it starts executing our visual script. The first thing our visual script does is it prints a string. The second thing our visual script does is it prints a string. So let's take a look at that in actor. You'll notice in the top left, we have hello in a nice turquoise-ish color, and we have world in hot pink. This is awesome. So we're starting to understand how nodes and commands work, and we're starting to understand the execution flow of what's happened. Quick little break. I forgot to mention something. You'll hear me mention it later in this video. It's pretty important as our node graphs start growing to know how to actually navigate this window. It turns out that in order to navigate this window, a couple quick commands that you need to know, or not even commands. If you right click in gray, you'll see that the cursor changes to a hand. If you right click, you can actually pan the window. If you alt while right clicking, you can zoom in and out. And that's going to be important as you start adding more nodes on to this execution chain. And you'll hear me mention it later because I completely spaced and forgot about it. So there we go. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. Now, at this point, I'm going to kind of just roll with that. You're kind of understanding this loop. We're basically going to make changes to our script to do different things. And as we make those changes, and we are going to use this loop where we compile, save, and begin play to start to introduce the idea and the fundamentals of visual scripting. In this case, right now, we're talking about commands. Soon, we're going to be talking about variables, and then we're going to talk about control flow, and then we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. But this is the loop that we're going to be doing it, and we're hyper focusing in on just the visual scripting aspect of it. We're going to learn some blueprint stuff along the way just by accident, and that's cool. But for now, let's hop back in. Okay, now, what else can we do with our visual scripting? What if we, how about we just kind of take a cruise and see what else is available to us? Let's see. Let's try draw. Let's type draw. Now there is a draw. There's a couple different draws in here. There's drawing debug boxes, drawing debug. Let's draw a debug sphere. All right, now this one is a little bit different. And what I want What I want you to start to understand is these commands, these functions that we're creating, and each of them does something different, and these are in order. So we have our first print, our second print, then our draw debug sphere. Now, what is a debug sphere? Basically, all it does is it draws a sphere. The interesting thing is the difference in the information that you give each of these. So you'll notice our print strings, they take a string. We can choose whether it prints the string or whether it prints the log. We can choose a color, duration, etc. The sphere is a little bit different. And we're going to get into how all of these things get created and whatnot later. But for now, these are all the cool commands that are available for us to use that somebody else has written, and we are going to be using a ton of them. So for our sphere, for right now, let's just keep the center at 0, 0, 0. That is a location in space. We'll keep our radius at 100. Segments is fine. Line color. Notice this, our duration is 0 and our thickness is 0. So even though I have this debug sphere, if I compile, save this, and I run our game, I don't actually see the sphere anywhere in here. I'm assuming 0, 0, 0 is somewhere in this scene, but I don't see it. And I'm moving this camera by left, I just tapped and I'm just moving my mouse. Okay, and the reason we don't see it is because we didn't set a duration. If we set the duration to be 10 seconds, and a thickness, right now 0 thickness means it doesn't have any thickness. If we set our thickness to 1, we compile and we save this, then we go back and we press play, you'll notice that, well, I don't actually see our sphere. I wonder where it is. Let's go back and take a look. Center of 0, 0, 0, thickness of 1, duration. Where is 0, 0 on our map? Let's make the radius bigger. See if we can find this sphere. Compile and save. And play. I do not see it. Ah, here it is. It's behind us. I didn't notice it was behind us. So it looks like our map, the 0 point on our map is behind us. So let's change this a little bit. So right now, we're going to just type in a value just to make it easier. If we look at where our actor is in the scene, you can see it's dragged out here. If you look over here in the outliner on the right, under details, you'll notice that there is a location here. And the location is 15, 30, 10, 10, and 20. If I right click on this, I'm going to choose copy. We're going to see if we can paste this in here. Paste. Nope, it didn't like that. So we're going to do it one at a time. So let's take 15, 30. And then it looks like 10, 10, and then 20. So I'm just changing where the center of the sphere is now. I'm going to change my radius back down to 100. And we're going to compile. We're going to save this. And we're going to press play. There it is. There's our sphere. Okay, so at this point, you have successfully kind of got the classroom set up, and now we're starting to do it. We're starting to work with visual scripting, and what we're looking at right now is the flow. We're looking at the execution order, and our execution order and understanding that is basically starting with our begin play, and then we're using these node links to determine what happens next. So if we wanted to, we could also draw a debug. What do you all want to draw? How about we do a box? No, cylinder. Now cylinder, you'll notice, is even different. It has a start and an end and a radius. So let's see if we can, oops, put it in the same place as our sphere. And we're going to make it 200 units tall because this is kind of, I think this is the base and the end. We have a radius, we're going to make it blue. Let's make it blue so that we can note that it's a different color. We'll change our duration to 10. We'll change our thickness to 1. We'll compile that and we'll save that. All right, you'll notice that we have now a sphere and a cylinder. So in Unreal, there are a lot of different commands that are available to us that we can use. Now, one of the other things that we can do is we can actually use these commands to change things in our scene. So for example, let's see if we can create something other than these debug spheres. So I'm going to drag out here and let's see if we can create, let's see what's interesting and easy for us to use that is not too complicated. Oh, we may maybe not create, let's try spawn. Let's spawn a system at location. All right, now what is this? If you've never used Unreal before, a system is a particle system. And I've just chosen this one because it is a straightforward command, doesn't require a whole lot of extra craziness, and we'll be able to work with this to do different things and change our flow. So the system and the location it works just like everything else so far. We specify the location and so on. But what we need to do is we need to pick a system. We have no systems, okay? That might not be a good one. Spawn. Let's try spawn emitter at location. Do we have any emitters? Yes, we do. Okay, great. So we're changing this to emitter. Like I said, we're making this class up on the fly. This is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be fun. All right, so we're spawning an emitter, and we're doing this intentionally just to keep things focused. The emitter I'm going to choose to spawn is the tutorial particle system. And we just need to connect our execution pin. And let's set our location to be the same location as these other debug objects. For example, we'll keep our rotation, auto destroy, and all that stuff. Let's just compile and save this. And let's see what happens when we run. There we go. We have our emitter. That's pretty cool. Okay, but what can we do with this? Wouldn't it be cool if we made the emitter move? Let's give that a try. So if we come back to our blueprint, so we're spawning, and you notice that our text, our hello, our world, those both disappeared. Then our debug sphere drew into, so did our cylinder. So now we spawned an emitter. Now, in order to make this emitter move, what we can do is we can set the location. This is where we're going to make a slight change. So far, we've only been dealing with these white pins. These are the execution pins. These determine the order of things. Well, one of the things that we can do is with our emitter, we can basically use the information of the spawn to make changes. So what I'm going to do is from this return value, I'm going to drag out and I'm going to set location. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a world offset. You'll notice it connects both pins. So what happens is I spawn my emitter and then I'm going to add a world offset of 100. Now let's go 200. So that should be 2 meters. Now if we compile and we save this and we play, it's going to be really hard to see what's happening, and I'll show you why. If you'll notice, our emitter is already 200 units away. We didn't actually get to see it move. Because what happened was, when Unreal started, if we escape out of here, when Unreal started, it came into our blueprint, started BeginPlay, printed hello, world, drew the sphere, drew the cylinder, spawned the emitter, and moved the emitter right away, almost instantaneously. It happened so fast, we didn't even see the emitter move. Wouldn't it be cool if we could actually watch it move? We can. So I'm going to make 2 changes to this. I'm going to move this over, and I happen to know that there is a node that is called delay. So let's type in delay. Now the delay is basically exactly what you would expect. It delays for a certain amount of time. Now, in order to give ourselves a little bit of time to recognize what's going on, I'm just going to change my duration of the delay to be 2 seconds. All right, now we have a 2-second delay. I'm also going to change our location to be 200 and Y instead, because it's going to be easier for us to see. So if we compile and we save this, when we start, Same thing's gonna happen. It's gonna go through all of our execution by following our pins or those white lines, and then it's going to hit the delay. And it's gonna count to 2, and then it's gonna move. So we'll be able to see our particle system move this time. Here we go. All right, so it starts out where it is, and notice it just kind of moved over to the side. We did that. That was us. That was visual scripting. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to do a lot of really cool stuff. So now our particle just sits here in the world. If we wanted to, we could put in another delay. We can copy this. Okay, so let's talk about this. Part of me is like, we should just do it the old-fashioned way, drag off this type out delay, so you get used to using this and clicking on delay, etc. But also, we want to learn some shortcuts along the way. Visual scripting on Unreal Engine is really cool. You can copy and paste nodes. So if I pick this delay node and I press Control C, I can come over here and press Control V and it will paste it. It knows how to copy and paste its own node. So I can drag this pin over to here, connect them up, and then I can copy the Add World Offset node and paste this as well. Now, when we do this, this is not going to work. If we compile it, you'll notice I get an error. All right, so now we're starting to get into a little bit of the information that Unreal helps us when we're visual scripting, as far as letting us know when we did something wrong. In this case, for some reason we have an error. We know we have an error because when we compile, there's a red circle up here, and Unreal is nice enough to highlight the node and put the word error on it that is causing the problem. So if I mouse over this word error, it says, the blueprint self is not a scene component, therefore target must have a connection. Okay, if you don't understand the first part, because it's kind of out there, the whole blueprint self and not having a scene component there, let's just take the end. Target must have a connection. Okay, well, if we look at it, our target has a connection here. Oh, so I need to connect the emitter to the move. Just like I connected the emitter to this world offset move, I need to connect it to this one. How do I do that? What you can do is you can drag off of this pin and you can connect to more than one item. So I can connect to this world offset and I can also connect to this world offset. Now, when I compile, now add world offset, which is expecting a target to move, has a connection. So it knows how to move it. So now what's going to happen, and we're going to come back and clean this up in a second. What's going to happen is we're going to spawn, we're going to move our emitter, 2 more seconds later, it's going to move again. So let's just watch this happen. So here's our spawn. There's 2 seconds, 2 seconds. So we're just moving our emitter across the map right now. Kind of cool. Okay, let's go back. What is it that I meant by clean up? Well, as you learn visual scripting, it's important that you work in a clean manner. What do I mean by clean? If you come in here and you look at what we've done so far, it's very easy to say, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can easily see what's happening. If you came in here and this stuff was all over the place, kind of mixed up, garbly gook, etc., it's very difficult to follow what's going on here. I can still do it. I have to follow lines and this kind of twisty tour. It's a lot better. It's a lot easier for you to follow and for the next person who's also potentially working with that to follow, to do so in a mostly clean fashion. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit here, and I'm going to use a hotkey to get this back. If I pick all of these nodes and I press the Q key, they line up for me. If I undo that, if I pick all of these nodes, I might be able to right click and choose alignment and choose align. I think it's straighten connections. You can see this right here. So you can either press Q or you can straighten. And then I can even right click if I want to get super diligent about this, and I can distribute horizontally and it'll make them all evenly spaced. So same thing, I'm going to take all of this, I'm going to, so I'm just going to highlight all of this and press Q, and it's going to line them all up. Now, here's the thing. When we look at this, when we look at this, it's very difficult to see what's happening in here, what's connected to what. So it would be great if we could clean this up. To clean this up, what we're going to do is we're actually going to redo our connections a little bit. And I'm just moving these out of the way so I can temporarily see what's happening. Our emitter at location is being connected to our add world offsets. Let's disconnect them. All right. Whoa, disconnect. We haven't even talked about disconnect. We know how to connect things, we just drag to them. How do we disconnect? If we right click, you can choose break this link, and that's going to disconnect it. Right click, break this link. Now, this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag from the blue circle to the target so that adding the world offset, we know we're adding the world offset to our spawned emitter. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the blue line. When I do that, it creates what's called a reroute node. And what this does is this allows me to kind of shape the way these lines work. And I can reroute blue lines, I can reroute all the lines effectively. And so now what I can do is you'll notice that it's a lot easier for me to make this visually more readable. What I'm going to do from this reroute node, because it's all still connected, what I can do is I can drag off of this, and it's the exact same thing as dragging off of the original return value. I'm going to drag off of the reroute node, and I'm going to connect it to my next target. I'm going to move my delay down, but this, still not super visually appealing to me, so I'm going to double click my reroute node again, and I'm going to put that in here. Now, the reason I've done this is because I can very clearly see if I'm ever looking at the world offset node over here, I can say, oh, what is my target? And I can follow this back and say, oh, it's the spawned emitter at the location. And I can follow these reroute nodes. So I will often make it so that these connections are done similar to this fashion. And you'll see me doing this as I work, because if you ever come back to it trying to understand the mess, if all of these are up here, what happens is you can kind of see, you don't know if these blue lines are coming off of this connection point or that connection point or where it's coming from. So it's just easier to keep them clean for me. And I'm always going to work like this as much as possible. Sometimes when I'm setting up a script, I might get a little bit messy as I'm working towards getting to the end goal. But I always go back. We have a rule at work: always leave a blueprint cleaner than when you found it. So, anyways, you'll see me doing this just normally as part of building good habits. All right, now what we've done is we basically just cleaned up our blueprint. We're still doing the same thing. We're still printing hello. We're still spawning spheres and cubes and all those kind of things. And we're also shifting and moving our particle system in the world. This is all using built-in Unreal commands, nodes, functions, things that the developers have created for us to work with. As we go forward, we are going to be building our own. We're going to be using control flow to make decisions within our visual scripts. We're going to be using variables to make them more powerful, and we're going to be using functions to make them more reusable. We have a lot to do throughout this course, hopefully to help you all wreck the learning curve when it comes to Unreal Engine and visual scripting. Now, one more note that I'd like to cover beforehand is we already talked about these reroute nodes on the blue lines. You can do the same thing on the white lines. We'll just throw one in for ease. If you double click, you'll see this reroute node shows up, and I can just drag this around. Now, if I undo, you can also right click and type reroute, and there's an add reroute node. I just find it's easier to double click and add it in there. So compile and save. Let's go back and take a look at our map one last time, and we are going to watch our particle system move. Cool. Okay, now let's take a look. We're going to work on one more bit today, I think, so that you all have a good understanding of how we can access different aspects of a blueprint as well. Right now, we are in our BeginPlay. We are basically doing all of our prints, our draws, and moving our particle systems. Most of the time in blueprints, you will have some kind of visual piece in your scene components. So we're going to add one to our actor so that we can use it to do things. So let's do that. In the top left of our blueprint, you'll notice a section that says components. And in there, we're going to add a component and we're going to choose static mesh. When we do that, let's just go to the viewport real quick so you can see this happening. On our static mesh, you'll notice over to the right, there is all kinds of information over here. The thing that we need to fill in is we need to tell this static mesh what kind of static mesh to draw. There is a section, it's depending on your Unreal version, it's usually about the 4th or 5th one down. It's usually denoted by these nice kind of cyan color. I think it's cyan, it's a blue. And if we just click the drop down next to that, we get to choose any of the static meshes that are available to us. So let's just find something cool. Yeah, now you can keep it simple. You can pick a sphere, for example, and maybe that would be the way to go. I'm just gonna see what might be cool here. You know what, I am gonna keep it simple. Let's just, in our search assets, just type in cube. And the cube that I want to use is, let's use the 3rd one down. It's just called cube static mesh. And when we do that, you'll notice that it's very large. We were zoomed in too much. You might have to zoom out. If you press F, it will frame it. If you hold the Alt key and right click and drag, you'll notice that you can zoom in and out, but usually F is enough. Now, the other thing that you can do if you want, I mean, this is just a general default gray material. That's fine. What I want you to notice is if we compile this and we go back and we look at our 3rd person map, you'll notice that our cube is sitting in our map because it's part of our actor. Okay, so let's go back to our class 1 actor. Let's go back to our event graph. Now, let's do some stuff with our cube. How do we do that? Well, the same way that we have basically set up nodes and things like that, we can move our cube, we can scale our cube, we can set different visual aspects of it. In order to do that, what we need to do is we need to get the ability to access the cube, a handle to it, it might be called, or a reference to it. The cool thing is it's visual, so it's just easier for me to show you. Now in this case, you'll see here the static mesh is up here on the left. If I just drag this out into our event graph, what's going to happen is you'll notice it gives me a node, or it's basically a reference to our static mesh. So now I can use this to manipulate our cube. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag off of the blue dot from static mesh, and I'm just going to try set location. Yes. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to let's add a world offset just like we did with our particle system. And we're going to do that, and you'll notice it creates the box. It automatically connects our static mesh to the target. We just need to connect our execution pins and the location that we want to offset, because it's a world offset. Let's go the other direction. Our particle system's going right. Let's take our cube to the left. Let's go -200. Okay, when we compile this, save it, and we press play, what's going to happen is we're going to play. All of our cubes and everything are there. Particle system moves, and then our cube moved after the particle system. Why did that happen? Hopefully, you can just follow this by following your blueprint. BeginPlay started. We printed hello, then we printed world, then we drew a debug sphere, then we drew a cylinder. That was almost instantaneous. It was instantaneous. Then we spawned an emitter. So when we first started, you saw the emitter sitting right there. Then we did a delay. We waited for 2 seconds. Then we added a world offset to the emitter. Then we delayed again. Then we added another world offset to the emitter. And then we immediately removed the cube. So if we do this again, what you will see, or you should see, is on the second move, the cube and the emitter will move at the same time. So let's just double check that so that our understanding of the execution flow is solid. Watch the cube and the emitter on the second one. Same time. Cool? Now, we can actually do the same thing here and split this up, and we can add in a delay here. I'm just going to drag off of this pen to show you one other feature of Unreal scripting, or Unreal Visual Scripting. If we type delay in here and we click on it, it's going to automatically connect it for us. And if I type in here, let's do a 1 second delay. Now what's going to happen is after our second emitter move, we're going to delay a second, and then we're going to move our static mesh. So let's go back and let's compile this, save it, and let's play. Same thing, let's watch it all happen. We have our cube moves, our emitter moves, it moves again. 1 second later, the cube moves. And I actually meant to say our cylinders and everything got spawned. Okay, let's make another change in here. I'm just gonna move this up because it's driving me nuts to see it going through the floor. So we'll move it up. I'm also gonna scale this down a little bit. We'll scale this in half so it's not so massive. I do that by selecting the cube static mesh, and then I can just change the attributes over here, 0.5, 0.5 for scale, and I can move it down probably 25, or move it by 25. That I think that will be sitting on the ground. We'll see. Compile, save, and then we run. You can see our cube is much smaller now. It's not taking over the whole scene. 1 second later, the cube moves. Now we can do this all day long. Anything that we put in our components, we can get reference to, like we've done here for the static mesh. So if I come back here, let's add a sphere. All right. Now if we go to our viewport, this sphere is inside the cube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the sphere and I'm going to move it outside the cube just so we can see it. And I'm also going to add a... What else can we add to this that might be interesting? Ooh, how about a cone? Okay, we added the cone. Now, interesting thing happened when I added the cone, it actually parented it to the sphere. I don't want to get too lost in this, but there is a hierarchy to the components. So right now, if I move this sphere, the cone moves with it. I don't really want that. So I'm just going to click the cone and I'm going to move it underneath the default. I chose attach there, so now they're all at the same level. So I can move my cone separate from my sphere, separate from my cube. Okay. When we go back to our event graph, we can compile this and save it. When we go back to our event graph, we can do the exact same thing with our cone and our sphere that we've been doing with our cube by simply dragging out, dropping it in, saying, I want to work with this sphere now. What do I want to do with this sphere? Let's see if we can scale it up. Set. Nope. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so we have scale. Can we set the scale? We can. We can set the relative scale in 3D, or we can set the world scale. So let's just set the relative scale. And I'm going to make relative scale of... Oh, this is going to be interesting. We need to see what this is going to do. If we set a relative scale of 111, let's see if our sphere changes size. Compile and save before we move on. Okay, it didn't change size. So what it's not an add-on. It is actually setting it. So now we can do what I originally wanted to do, which was to make the scale grow. I mean, to make the sphere grow. All right, so we're gonna make the sphere grow double the size. I'm gonna reduce these delays because I think you get the general idea. We can go a little bit faster. So I just picked each delay. I set them down to 1. By the way, it's probably a little late for this. How am I moving the graph around? I'm right-clicking and dragging to move the graph around. That would probably have been a good thing to go over. Again, so many things that we take for granted if we have worked in these kinds of environment stuff before, which is why we're trying to kind of go over and break some of this down. So this is where your questions are going to make this class better. That mistake alone might be worth going back and re-recording, and I'm going to defer that to all of you based on your comment. So I'll probably throw that in the description so that you know how I'm shifting this graph around. But basically, if I right click to drag it and I alt click and right click at the same, if I hold alt and right click at the same time, I can zoom in and out. If I highlight 4 options, can I frame on that? View, zoom to selection is the home, right? I didn't even know about that hotkey. That's kind of cool. View, zoom to graph extents. So I can basically pick 3 of these and press the home key and it'll zoom all in. Oh, that's pretty cool. Learn something new every day. Okay, so I will add that right click to drag, alt plus right click to zoom to the description in the YouTube video. And we'll go from there. Now, let's see here. So we have our scale. Now we're setting our scale 3D. Let's compile and save that, and let's run this. All right, so 1 second later, particle moves, 1 second later again, and then you'll notice that our sphere is now changing in size. All right, so this is it. This is how we execute commands that have been created for us by the developers and eventually one day ourselves. This is how we can interact with objects. We can do the same thing with our cone and start to move things around. Let's just do the same thing with our cone. We'll set the scale. I'm going to copy paste. Don't forget to connect the cone to the target. And the cone is now also going to get set up. So a particle moves, boom, both of those pop and grow in size. Very cool. All right, so let's wrap up a little bit of where we got to today. Yes, we had a little bit of setup. We had to get our classroom up and running, but we got into visual scripting. Today was all about familiarizing ourselves with the blueprint we're going to be working in to focus on visual scripting. And the visual scripting aspects that we talked about today were all about familiarizing ourselves with nodes, functions, how do we connect them, the execution order, little things about working cleanly, getting references to our components, connecting those in, all those kinds of things. So this is really just kind of starting to get us used to how do we even create and start to create a visual script. This is very much we're making this up as we go. If you have comments, things that we could approach differently, something that wasn't clear, throw those in the comments. Maybe we need to record another class. Happy to do that. I've even toyed with the idea of doing this live. So as we move forward, all feedback is welcome. And do keep in mind that we are focused here not mainly on blueprints. We are focused here on visual scripting for all of you who maybe have never had a traditional programming class or scripting class and are missing some of just the foundational pieces of understanding of what variables are, and for loops and control flow and inheritance and all these kinds of things. That's all the stuff that we're going to be talking about as we move forward. As always, your help is appreciated. If you like this video, like these contents, you think what we're doing is a good idea, just help share it out. Help support the channel in any way you know best. You're all social media gurus at this point. So support the channel in any way you know how. And I will be getting the next class together. I hope you all have a good one and catch you on the next one.